Hello mech warriors, and welcome back to the Mech Lab, where we try to be a better mech commander every day. Today's topic is bad clan mechs. We've already gone over many bad clan mechs in my previous bad clan mech video, including some of the worst mechs in the game that don't even have a single weapon to their name, but that doesn't mean that we've covered every single bad clan mech. Today we'll be covering 10 different mechs and a couple of variants from each that are truly terrible, and we're starting off with the lightest of the bunch, the Baboon or Howler. We're covering the 4 and 5 variant specifically. Let's go over the 4 first. This unit has a single LRM-5. That is its only weapon, and it has 711-7 movement speed. Now, it is a clan LRM, meaning that it can be used at close range. And this mech is rather cheap. 506 battle value is pretty cheap for a 711-7 unit, but it has pretty terrible armor overall, and it's gonna fold like a cheap suit to any kind of dedicated fire towards it. Now, the Baboon 5 doesn't have jump jets, but is way more expensive because it stacks on 6 ER medium lasers. That is a lot of firepower on a 711 chassis, but it has even less armor and is more vulnerable because it doesn't have the 7 jump jets to keep itself safe. I definitely cannot justify paying this much battle value for a 20-ton mech. Yeah, it's gonna do like a bit of damage with a single alpha strike, and then it's gonna fall over and die because the enemy is going to shoot it with all of their weapons. For 500 battle value, I might be able to justify a 7 jumping mech just so that it can kick people, and there aren't that many mechs in the clans that are this cheap that have 7 jump, but I feel like it's just gonna get blasted by pulse lasers or even just veteran gunnery units, and any solid hit is gonna take this thing out pretty quickly. Next up on the list is a really fast mech, 1218 at 25 tons, coming in at 728 battle value. The Ice Storm is reasonably cheap, very fast, but it doesn't carry any of the scouting gear that you would want on it, like an active probe, and it's pathetically undergunned. It has an SRM-2 and an ER medium laser. It's really not going to hit that hard. It's fast enough that it can get in behind people and deliver those weapons to their rear armor, but it's also so squishy that if you try and get in that close, you're probably going to die. One thing about this mech that is pretty bad is that it has single heat sinks, meaning that if you lose one of those thin side torsos, you're immediately just going to start overheating every turn, and you can't even fire your weapons anymore. So again, pretty cheap, can be used as a kicker, but it's gonna fold as soon as anyone fires any serious weaponry at it. So definitely not a mech that I can recommend. Next, let's look at the Arbalest. The Arbalest 1 and 2 are both light missile boat mechs, both coming in just over 1,000 battle value, 25 tons, 5.8 movement speed. Makes them really easy for most scout mechs to catch up to, and the very thin armor on the Arbalest 1 doesn't really help it to stay alive very well. Unlike the Ice Storm, it does have double heat sinks, so it can actually fire those LRM-10s and 2 ER medium lasers without going nuclear, and it has an ECM suite to kind of keep itself safe from stuff like Artemis, but this mech is really slow, and while it packs a pretty decent punch, it is an absolute glass cannon, and anyone who's followed this channel for a while knows that I despise glass cannons. So the Arbalest 1, definitely a loser. The Arbalest 2, in my opinion, is a little bit better. It is a little more expensive, but it has reasonable armor. 12 on the legs is a big improvement, and it has actual meaningful armor on its left and right torso as well, with 9 on there. It does give up one of the LRMs, but it picks up Mask, which will help it to survive a little bit. I still think that this mech is pretty terrible, but I think it's a little bit more usable than the Arbalest 1. We are keeping the 25 tonners coming. We've got the Crimson Hawk 2 and 4 variant. The Crimson Hawk is another light mech that is moving at 5.8. Definitely too slow for a clan light mech in my opinion. The Crimson Hawk 2 is especially egregious because it has 2 heavy large lasers, meaning that it wants to get in pretty close to fight the enemy, and it can't fire both of its weapons without overheating. At least it has 5 jump jets, meaning that it can run up to somebody, blast them with the heavy larges. If it manages to live, it can then jump away somewhere, hopefully to safety, but this is a very dangerous ride for a clan mech warrior, and I think the Crimson Hawk 4 might actually even be worse. It has a cursed 583 movement profile, a little bit less armor, but it does have slightly better weapons in my opinion. 2 ER medium lasers and an ER large laser all tied to a target targeting computer, this actually makes it kind of an okay skirmisher. It's not going to be able to take a hit, but if you can manage to stay away from the enemy, it can put in a little bit of work. The heavy flamer is really weird. I don't know why it has that, but just like its cousin, the Crimson Hawk 2, it also has major heat problems. It can't fire the ER large and 2 ER medium lasers without overheating, and again, it just doesn't have enough armor to be trading at close range. So basically you're going to treat this as an ER large laser on a 583 movement profile, and it's going to stay back and use that targeting computer ER large laser every single turn. Not worth it for almost 1400 battle value in my opinion. Next up we have the Koshi or Mist Lynx. This is more what I would expect out of a scout mech. 711-6 movement speed. This can actually do what you want a scout mech to do. It can run pretty fast, it has jump jets. This mech is actually capable of being a scout, but it's not capable of much more than that. With well under max armor, someone decided that it was a good idea to put an anti-missile system on almost all of these. I don't know who decided that. They are an idiot. You should always just take more armor rather than an anti-missile system, in my opinion. It doesn't really do that much. Now we've got the Mistlink C, which is really expensive, 1300 battle value. It has an ER large laser and an ER medium laser. It has an ECM suite and an active probe, so it can actually do some jamming, it can do some scouting, and it is a fast skirmisher that wants to stay at range 10 or range 15 and use its range brackets to its advantage. But like I said, very expensive. 1300 battle value. For another like 100 battle value, you could have a Dragonfly, which is going to do this job much better and won't just fall over as soon as it gets looked at by any medium or heavy mech. And then we've got the H, doesn't have the ECM, but has a really terrible weapon spread for something that is this incredibly easy to kill. 2 heavy small lasers, a heavy medium laser, and a streak 6 mean that this thing wants to close to within like 2 hexes and blast away, so it's pretty much exclusively a backstabber. It's not really going to serve much other function in your force other than, like I said, it does have the probe, so it can find targets if you have reduced visibility. But overall, I really hate the Koshi. I don't think that it's a good chassis at all. There are other variants that are also bad, but these are 2 particularly egregious versions for different reasons. This one has to get way too close, so it's going to die. This one costs a little bit too much battle value for an ER large laser on a stick. Now we're moving up in the tonnage brackets. We are into the 40-ton range. We have one of the most expensive medium mechs I have ever seen, the Pouncer. So the Prime and the D variant, we've got 115 armor, which is decent. We have at least 10 on every location. It has entirely too much armor on the back, in my opinion. They need to strip some of that off and put it on the front instead. It's a little bit slow for a 40-tonner. I would expect more like Dragonfly speed for something this size with an XL engine instead of a 695 movement profile. 695 though is pretty decent as a movement profile. I'm not gonna knock it for that. I'm mostly knocking it because it costs 2500 battle value. This is insanely expensive. It's so much worse than the Dragonfly and so much more expensive. You pay almost twice as much battle value for these. Now we've got 2 ER PPCs with a targeting computer on a decently mobile frame, but not nearly enough heat sinks. You're gonna have to do a 2-1-2 fire pattern with these, which is just really unfortunate. It's not really gonna serve you well. It's just way too hot. And then the Panzer D is the same. It has the same number of heat sinks. Its front-mounted weapons cause 38 heat when you alpha strike. That's not even including any movement heat. So you could go up to 40 and be over by what, 16 heat? That's insane. You can't possibly be going to 16 heat just to fire all of your weapons. I will say, targeting computer on this many ER medium lasers is pretty attractive. I do like that quite a bit, but you can't even fire the ER medium lasers without overheating. By a significant amount, too. These produce 30 heat altogether. So if you're running and fire all of your lasers, you're gonna go to 8 heat, and then on the next turn, you're gonna suffer firing penalties. So overall, these 2 mechs are completely useless. There is never any reason to take the Pouncer D or the Pouncer Prime, or really any variant of the Pouncer, really. They're way too expensive. They're a little bit squishy, and they just have way too many heat problems. Alright, next we're going to look at the Black Lantern. Now, the Black Lantern, in my opinion, does actually have like a purpose. It's not completely useless. It's a little bit over-engined for its size. The main thing that really kills the Black Lantern is that it's got mask, which makes it cost a little bit too much battle value for what you get. 711 movement base is actually quite decent. That lets you get to 4 TMM if you're pretty much running in a straight line. But honestly, I'd probably rather have like a 695 movement profile like the previous mech that we were looking at, and more armor, because we only have 153 armor. It is well allocated. We've got 557 in the back. That's what I like to see. But the arms are really under armored, and that's where all of the weapons are. So once the weapons are gone, this mech is pretty bad. It can be used as a charging machine, which is interesting. It's not gonna do that much, but it will hurt pretty badly if you charge someone at max distance with mask on. One thing I do like about the secondary equipment in the A variant is that it has an ECM suite and an active probe, so it can fill that scout mech role for you. And it does have weapons of exploitation. We've got an ERPPC, it can hang back and fire with that every turn. And then you can close in, use the pulse lasers and the tag, guide in some missiles, and deal some good accurate damage. It can hunt light mechs. It's not really meant to do that, but it can do it. Again, this mech does have some heat problems, only 20 sinking. The Alpha Strike is going to produce a lot more than that. The heat problems aren't as bad as the Pouncer, but they're still very present. And we all know how I feel about mask. If you don't, go and watch my mask video. It'll show you why mask is really bad. A really fast unit with LRMs for just under 2,000 battle value. There are better LRM boats that you can get than this. You don't need to be this fast to make LRMs work. Having 2 LRM 20s is pretty okay, but the mech also has some problems with maintaining fire. We are looking at 9 rounds of sustained fire with the LRM 20s. That's not nearly enough for even a single match. Although, if you're getting this thing in close, using that 7 range bracket, it's probably gonna die before it runs out of ammo anyways. Out of all the variants we're looking at today, the B is probably the best. I still don't think it's very good. It's mostly decent because it has reasonable firepower for pretty cheap. I'd hesitate to call 2,000 battle value cheap, but it's less expensive than the A and the J. The A is exorbitantly expensive at 2,300 battle value. That is absolutely atrocious. And the J is a really weird mech. It suffers from having a bad weapon, the Protomech AC-8. This is an autocannon that does 8 damage and has pretty short range. It also suffers from having both mask and a supercharger, which balloons its battle value quite a bit. Despite not doing very much damage overall, this thing costs a lot of battle value, partially because that 18 gets you up to 5 TMM if you engage the supercharger and mask at the same time. However, you're just asking for engine and leg crits if you maintain that for any kind of long period. Overall, Black Lantern, subpar mech, not completely useless. Out of all the mechs on this list, probably the best, but I still wouldn't take it unless I was forced to. Alright, next up on the list we have the Balius, which is probably my favorite mech on this list. The reason being, it leans into clan ridiculousness so well. It is a quad mech that looks like a horse. You cannot get more totem mech than making your mech look pretty much exactly like what it's designed to be like. It represents Hell's horses perfectly, reasonably fast, and has pretty good firepower overall, but it suffers from the problems that most quad mechs suffer from, and they like to mount weapons in the rear, which is very, very unfortunate. It's kind of a good thing to have on a quad mech just because they are so easily outflanked. They can't torso twist, but they tend to place like the best weapons in the rear, which is really, really bad. You don't want that to happen. The side torsos are also a little bit under armored in my opinion. 20 armor is decent, but if one of these side torsos is gone, the mech pretty much just dies because the legs fall off. Once the mobility of 6'9" is gone from the Balius, it's lost most of its functionality. These two variants, the E and the D in particular, have, I would say, a pretty bad spread of weapons overall. The E is all over the place. It's got a Streak LRM-15 and an ER large pulse laser, so it's trying to go for that long range fire, I guess. And then it has a Streak SRM, and of course the Flamer. They all have a Flamer in the face because they're like a nightmare horse, right? They're like an evil demon horse that breathes fire. I guess that's the theme that they were going for. But this just feels kind of pillow-fisted. An LRM-15 and an ER-large pulse laser, maybe on a medium mech, that would feel a little bit threatening, but on a heavy, a 65-tonner, that's a little bit underwhelming. Now, it is because the mech is slightly over-engined, similar to the Black Lantern, so there's not a lot of pod space to go around, but they could have spent that pod space on more efficient weapons than these. But the E is at least kind of affordable at $2150 battle value. It's still expensive, but you kind of get what you pay for with this one. With 696 movement, the battle value just gets ballooned like crazy on the D. 2400 battle value, and really kind of pillow-fisted as well. We've got an ER PPC at long range, so we can skirmish with that, and then we've got 4 ER medium lasers that can fire at that closer range, and then if they get behind you, they've got medium pulse lasers, but I feel like that's just not good enough. Quad mechs have a dead zone in their side arc where you can hide from all of their weapons, so I think what the Balius actually really needed was a torso turret. It really needed to have a torso turret on probably both torsos. It would take up a little bit of tonnage, but it would make it much, much better overall. I really like torso turrets on quad mechs. I think it might be the only way to make them really, really effective in my opinion, because no torso twist makes these things extremely hard to play around. So Balius, really bad. I wouldn't ever play this thing unless I was forced to. Now, to round out our list here, I have two 2C variants of mechs. Now, the Venerable Hunchback is a classic. Everyone loves it. The Hunchback 2C, however, is an absolute travesty of a mech. This is a mech that was designed for failing older clan mech warriors who wanted to die in battle, and you can see it in the design philosophy 100%. This is like an ambusher with just over 100 armor on a 50-tonner, which is pretty pathetically low, and they put pretty much all of the emphasis on massive close-range firepower. However, the Hunchback 2C2, unlike the original Hunchback 2C and some of the other variants that have like big autocannons, this mech is horribly undersynced. It can fire one set of 2 heavy large lasers in the side torso without overheating, but it cannot use the medium pulse lasers alongside of them. And if it tries to alpha strike, this thing is going to explode or shut down. So if you want a mech that can fire once and then can't do anything for nearly 1900 battle value, the Hunchback 2C2 is for you, my friend. And then we've got the Urban Mech 2C, which whose idea was it to make an updated version of the Urban Mech? Everyone knows that the Urban Mech is terrible. I know that there's a lot of memes and people love the Urban Mech because it's silly, but this is a terrible, terrible mech. Why would you ever try and make an updated version of this? And if you did, and we're already taking the time to increase the engine size, why wouldn't you increase the engine size more and make it like somewhat viable instead of just jamming an Ultra AC-10 in there? For 800 battle value, you have a mech that's going to explode as soon as anything looks at it. It has more armor on the arms than on the torsos for some reason. I don't know why anyone ever decided that that was a good idea. It's really not. So many mechs have this issue. The Marauder, the Warhammer. Mech designers need to stop putting more armor on the arms than on the torsos. Even if the weapons are in the arms, I don't care. You need to have the torsos well protected or else the mech just dies. And the arm falls off anyways after the torso gets destroyed. So that's our list today of 10 really terrible clan mechs. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Really helps out the channel. Do you have any terrible clan mechs that you would recommend that nobody ever play? I would love to hear about them. Please leave a comment with that down below. Thank you so much for watching, Mech Warriors, and have a great day.